We are Rogue Media Sports.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And live from AT&T Stadium, just in the aftermath of this Cowboys stunning 13-10 win over the New Orleans Saints. Cowboys now have the upper hand, not only in the division, but racing toward the playoffs. Ed Werder joins. It is a special Doomsday Podcast in just the moments after this win. And Ed, I think as we try to put this thing in perspective, and we'll look at this from a lot of different areas. Of course, we'll have Glenn Stretch Smith's grades and all of that. But the fact that the Cowboys were able to win this game, scoring only 13 points against one of the most prolific offenses in the history of the league, I don't think in our wildest dreams we saw this sort of outcome happening.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what's happened in the league this year, there's been a historic level of scoring. And for the Cowboys to take on this Saints team that's the highest scoring team in the league, has a future Hall of Fame quarterback in Drew Brees playing at the height of his powers, and a Saints team that had won 10 in a row, and hold them 4 touchdowns below their scoring average, I think it's one of the most amazing accomplishments that we've seen in defensive football in the NFL in a number of years. I mean, this is, as I said, it's been a year of historic scoring, and yet the Cowboys remain the only defense in the NFL that has yet to surrender 30 points in a game at any point this season. And holding the Saints to 10 points and beating them is totally without precedent. The Saints have, of course, only lost twice this season, and in their other defeat, it was week 1, they scored 40 points in that game. So I think that puts into perspective what these young players on defense, the speed and the aggression and the execution they brought, and the great plan that Chris Richard and Rod Marinelli put together.
This is starting to seem like possibly a championship defense. It's hard to trust this offense. But, Ed, one of the things we always do, you've checked in with all your folks. We've got some good stuff. I got to talk to Jerry after the game, and then got some interesting things to share with our audience, Ed, as far as what Jason Garrett did to try to get Randy Gregory's attention after the game. All of that is next. Frito, play the music. And it is time for that Doomsday Podcast, and Ed Werder joining me, Matt Mosley, Frito Nation Productions. We are on site at AT&T Stadium after this one, and from another luxury suite, the Nation family, kind enough to let us into the luxury suite this evening. Ed, I got to say, as much as I'm, we'll talk about, and I know you're always come up with unbelievable numbers, what the Cowboys were able to accomplish in holding the Saints to 10 points and winning this 13-10. But when they did fumble late in the game, and Dak, that's an issue. We're going to have to address that at some point. 11 fumbles now in the season by my count. I thought for all the world that Drew Brees was about to take that team down the field, and Ed, somehow, some way, the Cowboys prevented that from happening.
Well, I think, there were a lot of big plays in the game, but the one that kind of clinched it, I think, was, Jordan Lewis's interception. And that was the result of one of the tactics that the defensive coaching staff prepared specifically for this game, which was, most teams cover Alvin Kamara as a running back. So they use a linebacker on him, but the Cowboys decided in certain situations they were going to treat him as a wide receiver, and they were going to put a cornerback on him because a cornerback is more accustomed to being in coverage, more comfortable, with being in space against a speed player like Kamara. And so that's the reason that Jordan Lewis was in the position he was in to make an interception on a play where the Cowboys obviously got pressure from inside on Drew Brees, who's a 6-foot quarterback and struggles when that happens. And he said he was just trying to throw the football away, but Jordan Lewis came up with a terrific interception on a ball that was very close to striking the turf and achieving Brees' objective of stopping the clock and living to play another down. So talking to somebody with the team after the game, they told me that was totally Chris Richard development, and it's a credit to him for using all of their players. And that's something I think the Cowboys have excelled at throughout the course of the season, and they're really seeing the difference that a single position coach can make, although he's been granted broader powers than just passing game, coordinator. Obviously, Rod said earlier in the season he was allowing Richard to call the defenses by and large.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make, Ed. Jordan Lewis, and you'll hear from him here in a little bit, talked about, being the closer. This is a player, Ed, that has been more of a gadget guy with Tavon Austin out. They've used him on these jet sweeps. It's almost kind of comical. He goes in, he gets, at most like 6 or 7 yards on a jet sweep. But there he was at the end of the game. And it's been a long time since we've seen a Cowboys secondary, and of course they're starting to get some interceptions finally, but get their hands on this many balls. And I don't know how you were. I looked up late in the game, Ed, and it was on that drive after the Randy Gregory, just a horrible play on special teams that allowed them to extend that drive. But on that drive, they put up the passing yards for the two teams. And I swear it said like 109 yards for the Saints. And while I had watched the entire game, that really grabbed my attention. I was like, is that serious? Somehow Drew Brees, the great Drew Brees, has been held to 109 yards. Ed, this is you're right. This is sort of a historic performance by the Cowboys. And this is sort of a message to the rest of the league that, you know what, there are other ways than beating teams 54-51. Or, as you said, losing 48-40, the only other loss the Saints had.
Well, we're all fascinated by offense, and we all, wonder what was going to happen in the aftermath of that, Rams-Chiefs game where they scored 105 points. Well, this game was just as compelling, and there were only 82 fewer points scored in it. And the Patriots-Chiefs game, created 83 points, and this game's, produced 60 fewer than that. But a pretty remarkable defensive performance that we really didn't know was capable of happening in the NFL anymore. But I think it's a credit to sort of what Rod Marinelli said that was unique about this collection of defensive players, which is, before the game, he was asked how he's going to stop the Saints. He said, we have to do the ordinary better than anybody else. We have to use our speed. That's our weapon, our speed and our athleticism. And they go into this game against a Saints team that had not trailed in any of its previous 18 quarters, and the Cowboys never allowed them to lead the game. In fact, the Saints played from behind from the very beginning since the Cowboys scored on their first possession. And they overcame, obviously, some adversity with the Amari Cooper fumble, the 7 sacks of Dak Prescott, and as you mentioned, his 11th fumble of the season, the most by a quarterback, and including that one at the end of the game right before Jordan Lewis saved the day for the offense. But this is the first time the Cowboys have won a game where they've had a turnover, and now I think it's really up to them to do something of significance with this victory. Every other team in their division had to have written this down as a loss for Dallas based on how badly they themselves had lost to the Saints. The Saints had owned this division. They beat the Giants 33-18. They beat the Redskins 43-19. They beat the Eagles 48-7. So for the Cowboys to play a completely different kind of game, which, to the credit of Stephen Jones and Jerry, that's what they contended, right? This was sort of a test of the legitimacy of the Cowboys' team-building philosophy, which is you can still, in this day and age, run the football and play great defense and beat these high-scoring, one-dimensional offensive teams, and they proved that possible, at least on this night.
Ed, you have been with Jerry on a lot of nights where he almost didn't make it to sleep. He did say after the game he will not get any sleep. This is such a huge win for the team. I wanna let us both listen right now. This is Jerry Jones when I ask him what kind of statement this win made to the rest of the league.
Well, I think that the most important ones that have this win are our players, and they really have. I'm going to say this again. When you have that kind of success in the face of, when you're dealing with a tremendous opponent or you're dealing with adverse situation, and you have that, you always will know all your life you can do it. You can actually do it. That is a whole big lot of what it takes to work through adverse type situations. These guys won't be the same again. When you football, if you ever get a chance to play in a game this meaningful and come out with a positive experience, it'll change you.
Jerry,
I got to do it young, and it's I would go as far as to say it's why I'm sitting here with the Cowboys today. It changed me.
Jerry, everybody's talking about offense. Do you think this says that you can win with defense in this league?
Well, I've always really thought that you had to be sound to real sound, and in the games when two teams are really slugging it out, then I think that does make the difference. And I am just so impressed because I have such respect for Brees, the system they're in, and for our defense to play like it is. But they had a defense that I was really appreciative of and respect. And I thought our offensive line, especially early, was doing a great physical job against them.
Jerry, what did Jason say to the team Wednesday night? He supposedly gave this big impassioned speech that really got them up. I mean, do you know what he said to them? What the message was?
I do not. No.
What about Jason in general? I mean, what does this tell you about the resiliency of him?
Well, he's won a big game tonight. I'll just leave it at that. He won a big game tonight.
And to your players, what does it say to you about your team? Do you feel like now that you have a championship type team?
Well, I know the caliber of competition in the 2 and 4 of the games we've got before we get to the playoffs, and then I just really have a real knowledge of the different variations of what you might be playing in the playoffs. And so when you get there, you need to be physical and you need to be on the road. And anybody that tells you beating the New Orleans Saints tonight in front of this home crowd, this young football team, doesn't help you get on the roll at the end, and if you can get in the playoffs, doesn't understand. This is definitely a dream that we could use this win over a really good team. Use this win to help us get our confidence, help us realize that we can do it. We can do it against the very best in the NFL.
Did your life flash before your eyes when Dak turned it over down there close? Obviously, you just don't want to give a guy like Brees too many chances.
Yeah, and then we turned right around and got our turnover, but it certainly did. We all have the respect for Brees, but I can't tell you how impressed I was with our guys for getting after him tonight and creating the issues for him to get him out of his game. It was outstanding.
If the defense is championship caliber, what is the offense?
Well, I think the offense is very physical. I think it's very efficient, and I like what we've done in our receiving core, and I think you saw us down there near the end. I think you saw us throw the ball on third down in the end zone to number 19. We got one of the good things that happened. That's a pass interference call. I think that our receiving core has given back a lot of confidence. They're working together. We're better offensively significantly than we were 4 or 5 games back.
When there he was, Jerry, a jubilant Jerry Jones after the game. Ed, there was some talk that on Wednesday, which would have been yesterday, in fact, as we record this on Thursday evening, that Jason made Jason's on a roll. He's making some great speeches. We didn't get the exact content of the speech, but he made a speech that apparently really stuck with these guys. And Jerry, I loved it. Somebody really went in there with a question to Jerry about how great the speech must have been. And Jerry finally, I think he'd had about enough of bragging on Garrett. And he finally said, I really don't have any clue what you're talking about. So it was I kind of liked how Jerry handled that. Ed, as we continue to break down this defensive performance, we'll get to Gregory in a minute. That was kind of a down point of this game, and it could have led to a loss, but they were able to overcome it. What did you make of, and we'll get Stretch's grades here in a minute, but the way the Cowboys defended these wide receivers, pretty physical with them. In fact, there were some calls tonight. They did get hit with some holding penalties and a couple of pass interferences. But what did you make of the way they kind of got in there and were extremely physical with these wide receivers?
Well, I think that's kind of the hallmark of the way that Chris Richard wants to play. That's the new concept and approach that he brought to Dallas from Seattle, which was to get up on these receivers and be physical with them at the line of scrimmage. And I think there's been a lot of criticism of NFL teams not disguising defenses, sort of just kind of giving up with these limitations that they're under as far as the rules are concerned. And yet we saw a Cowboys secondary tonight that really challenged the Saints receivers. I mean, I think they refused to really concede anything. They prevented any kind of significant separation, and that forced Brees, who was already, as we said, under extraordinary pressure most of the night, to throw into uncharacteristically tight windows. And even when he managed to complete passes, the Cowboys tackled immediately and really denied the Saints any significant yards after the catch on almost every defensive play that there was in the game. And the result was that, especially in the first half, that the Cowboys shut out the Saints, held them to 59 yards, 3 first downs, all unprecedented lows in the Peyton Brees era in New Orleans. And you talk about speeches, I think the words that really resonated more than any for this team, and especially the defense, was what DeMarcus Lawrence said in the locker room, on Tuesday afternoon when he said, "Hey, we've talked up, being the difference in this game. They're going to have to match our intensity for 60 minutes straight. If you hit an MF in the mouth and they ain't doing what they're regularly doing and putting up 50 points, they start to get a little distressed. Now you got them where you want them, and at the end you just choke them out." And that's pretty much what they did.
Yeah, I love hearing you say that, Ed. You said that at times about your own reporting, and I thought that was a good thing for you. Now let's talk about a little bit of a negative, Ed. Randy Gregory, Cowboys had a big hold. It's 13-3, and they're still in control of this game. Huge hold, and Saints have to punt. And Gregory goes in there, and it was just amazing that he ended up doing what he did. He it's obvious he's not going to block the punt, and yet he still rolls into the punter. And then, of course, after that, Eddie had the big neutral zone infraction, which some people thought was a little iffy on where he lined up there. But I guess it was close enough that it forced them to make the call in this instance. And as I told you, Jason Garrett, I told you, I don't think I've said it yet. Moments after the game, I watched Garrett in a little, one of those side offices in the locker room call Gregory into it. And he was in there for 6-7 minutes, I would say. And so I would say that wasn't like hey, way to go, Randy. I would hope Garrett was using that moment to say, hey, you had some, pretty rough moments in this game.
Well, he had a couple of unconscionable penalties. The first one that you mentioned was the offside penalty that cost the Cowboys DeMarcus Lawrence fumble recovery. The other two were personal foul penalties, the roughing the punter and a face mask of Drew Brees, both of which extended Saints drives that led to their only points of the game. So on both of the Saints scoring drives, Gregory extended those or contributed to those with personal foul penalties that cost 15 yards and a first down. And it's amazing how much great football produced by so many players can become virtually meaningless compared to the foolish penalties on one player at the exact wrong time. It was totally possible that Randy Gregory's mistakes were going to cost the Cowboys a game in which they had dominated throughout defensively. So, I think they have one guy who can empathize with Gregory's mistakes as assistant defensive line coach, Leon Lett. Obviously overcame some serious errors during the course of his career, and many people thought that the Cowboys maybe should release him after the one where he slid into the football in the Thanksgiving game in the ice and hail. And Jimmy didn't do that, and he stuck with him, and Lett obviously had a very significant presence on a Cowboys defensive line for their Super Bowl team. So Randy Gregory cannot make those kinds of mistakes, especially given all the chances that this team has given him.
Yeah, it is. It's remarkable, what he has done and sort of been through. And every time you sort of think, oh man, he makes some incredible plays. He certainly has speed around the end, all of that, and then something happens to really make you second guess what they've done with him. All right, Ed.
The Cowboys were fortunate that Von Bell had a Randy Gregory moment himself, right, in the fourth quarter when Dak threw an incomplete pass in scoring position on third down, and he got a roughing the passer penalty for hitting Prescott in the head. So he made one mistake, but Gregory made three, one costing the Cowboys a turnover, and the other two both occurring on the Saints' only two scoring drives of the night.
Yeah, it's something that definitely they need to get straightened out, and hopefully Garrett had a heart-to-heart with him and is able to do that. Ed, we will get to our favorite That's a Stretch segment with Cowboys scout and former coach Glenn Stretch Smith, but I wanted to say a word about MyBookie, and Ed, if folks will go to MyBookie, one of the great things, and Ed, I know you're not just a huge offshore guy who likes to throw the money down, but I'm telling you, the guys at MyBookie, they make it so extremely easy. And one of the issues with when you use a site like this, one of the issues can be, well, they just don't send you the money fast enough because, they're like, hey, we want you to spend some more money with us. They pay quickly. They have an incredible mobile site. And one of the things they've done, because we've had so much success with Doomsday and MyBookie, basically, if you will put the promo code Doomsday, DOOMSDAY, up to $1,000 is what they will throw in there into your account, and they will help you out in that way. MyBookie continues to be just an extremely good place out there to do business. In fact, Ed, I'm not a big gambler. I'm too Baptist for that. But the truth of the matter is, when I'm trying to look at all these games, college and pro, I go on the site to MyBookie, and I'm constantly looking there. And for fantasy players, I mean, you can do the fantasy stuff, over, under on the players, all of that with MyBookie. We so much appreciate MyBookie and the big part that they've played in Doomsday. And Ed, I also want to say to you right now, you'll want to start thinking about what vehicle you want, because Richardson Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram is getting ready to have a big December with Doomsday. I'll just leave it that way. Yeah.
I'll just tell you that we've had 3 or 4 Jeep Grand Cherokees in our family. In fact, we own one now.
That's a guy, Ed, if you want to upgrade your Cherokee, your Grand Cherokee, I know you're a man who at least has one second home in Colorado, and those Grand Cherokees do a great job up in the mountains. That is true. Okay, it is time, Ed. I know you always wait for it, and you always want me to get to it. It's time to talk to Glenn Stretch Smith on That's a Stretch. And Stretch, you and I are in a luxury suite right now, high above the stadium, in the aftermath of this 13-10 victory for the Cowboys. I think you and I both said this. First team to 13 would win this game against, and of course, Ed Werder will be back. You'll hear him in a minute. But right now, it's just Stretch and Mosley talking some ball, as we like to do. Stretch, first of all, before we jump into the defense, and you and I we were kind of up there together in the press box tonight. How shocked were you, not only that the Cowboys won, but that it was this result, that the score ended up being what it was?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Early on in the game, I thought that the Cowboys really set the tone for what was a physical football game for 60 minutes. I mean, I don't know that I've seen this physical a game, I'm talking about on the defensive side of the football, in a long time. And when you think about how really they came off, with Lawrence making the statements early in the week, Matt, and saying, you know what, hey, we're going to get after him. And sure enough, I mean, that's exactly what they did. I mean, you saw their inside guys. I mean, you saw Woods, you saw Collins, you saw Croft. All those guys from an inside standpoint were really getting pressure up inside. And when you can do that, then that allows those ends to be edge players. Lawrence, Gregory, I mean, they were coming off the edge and really causing Drew Brees some issues. And I guess I was shocked at really the physicality that the defense really laid on the line tonight.
All right, I looked up fairly late in the game. I think it was fourth quarter. It might have been on that drive where the Saints actually did go down and score finally, where Randy Gregory just lost his mind, and we'll get to him. But I look up on the screen, and they had the Saints with like 106 yards passing, and I thought, I mean, this is Drew Brees. This is a guy having an MVP-like season. So let's start giving the grades as we love to do with you. And Stretch, I think it'd be fitting. Let's start with the secondary for the Cowboys. A couple of penalties here and there, pass interference, a holding penalty. But what did you make of the secondary, especially given the fact that Michael Thomas and some of these big-time wide receivers were really slowed down tonight?
Yeah, just the secondary getting their hands on footballs. I hadn't seen a Cowboys secondary get their hands on so many balls in a long time. Now, unfortunately, Byron Jones grabbed late. He felt like he was out of position, but I thought he played an outstanding game. I mean, Awuzie getting his hands on the ball, and obviously Lewis made the interception. Brown, I got a little frustrated with him. Had he kept his feet on the one touchdown play, I mean, he's there to make a play. But grading the secondary.
But he had the sack. He had the sack.
No question. And that's what I was going to say. Grading the secondary with how they tackled, with how they covered, with their physical presence and what they did, I got to give that group an A.
Oh, an A. An A. We start with the secondary. Let's move to the linebackers. We have bragged a lot on Mr. Van Der Esch. Another physical game for him. Made some plays. The guy always seems to be a sure tackler. And even 51. Where did this young man come from? Quran somebody. I mean, he just kind of dropped in like the stork or something. They just dropped him off, and the guy's making some plays. How'd you have the linebackers in this one?
I think that's the group that has really taken the leadership role of this football team, and they have shown by example from a physical standpoint. I mean, Van Der Esch on the 4th and goal down there, I mean, is blowing it up in there, and I mean, it's violent. You see Jalen chase the screen, and really, I mean, he hit Kamara, and they probably could have thrown a flag on that, but I mean, he got up and went directly to the tent. I mean, it was an awesome blow on the sideline. But I think this group, and as hard as this is for me to say, because I was very critical of the pick when they made it, being Van Der Esch, he is big time, and you see what he's doing, how he's doing it, and I really felt like that would be the matchup of the game, was could he run with Kamara out of the backfield, and he was all over the field. A plus for the linebackers. I haven't seen this group play that well in a long time.
Whoa, a rare A plus from Stretch. Not a guy who usually hands out those kind of quality grades. By the way, Stretch, on a point you just made about we talked about this draft a lot. Derwin James was the number 17 pick with the Chargers. Jair Alexander with the Green Bay Packers at 18. And while they've had a rough year at Green Bay, that kid's played extremely well. And then, of course, Van Der Esch coming at 19. How about that? A pretty great stretch of players.
And I think
in the
wasn't
draft.
Payne right before that, about 17, 16, if I can remember right. I think Payne was right before that. So, yeah, I mean, I think that you really, we all were kind of thinking Ridley, right, when they initially
who went
made the pick.
26th, I believe, yeah.
But I tell you what, I mean, I couldn't have been any – I can't tell you how impressed I am with Van Der Esch, his style of play, the fact that he stayed on the field. I mean, he had some injury issues getting dinged at Boise, but the fact that he has stayed on the field and played so physical, I mean, it's beyond something that I could have ever imagined. And hey, for that, I'm while we're grading people, hell, let's give the scouting department a good grade for picking that guy, because you know what, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, and the Cowboys continue to really look good on some of these linebacker picks that they had. Sean Lee, one of the great things is they haven't had to rush him back at all. He'll be helpful. It's not like they won't play him, but they can let him rest as long as he needs. There's a thought that maybe he'll be back for the Eagles game on the 9th. And so I think that's a pretty good situation to be in. Okay, let's talk about this front four, because, to hold down Drew Brees like they did, you had to have a great game from this group.
And they played all night. It wasn't. I was really kind of concerned coming out after the half, Matt, because, I mean, the Cowboys had controlled the time of possession in the first half, and I thought, okay, I hope they can get their motor cranked up coming out after the half. And I didn't see them back off at all. I really saw a front four that played with the same passion that the linebackers are playing with. Now, I'm not going to grade them as high as I graded the linebackers, because I still thought that there were a few things that I would have liked to have seen. But overall, when you think about the pressure that they were able to put on them across the board, you got to give that group an A. And I'm telling you, the best defensive game I've seen the Cowboys play in years.
Yeah, it was a remarkable effort. Boy, on a negative note, on that defensive line, Randy Gregory lined up in the neutral zone. Now, that may have been an iffy call.
I thought that was
an iffy call. But now the play on special teams was a brutal play by him, and it led to the Saints' only touchdown.
And I thought they were in punt safe. I mean, that's the thing that was frustrating. They had the defense out there. They were in punt safe. And I don't know whether he just had a brain lapse. I don't know. But I go back to the different personnel groupings that I saw the Cowboys play. They played some 4-1, 4 down linemen, 1 linebacker dime look at times. And I really thought it made the difference, because they were able to match up with New Orleans, unlike I've seen any team match up with them all year. And to me, that's the difference in them winning the football game. They could match up with them. They didn't have to blitz a lot, and they could get a steady pressure with that 4-man look.
This looks like a championship-type defense, and, of course, what we have to talk about. So, by the way, special teams, you want to give them – Gregory had the brain-dead play there. But, by the way, big special teams play down here where it looked like the Cowboys were going to be pinned back on the 1-yard line. The kid the player for New Orleans had his forearm on the goal line. Cowboys get on the 20. Thought that loomed large in this game.
Huge 19-yard play. I can't imagine what Gregory was thinking. I mean, I know that young man has got a motor that runs, and you don't want to dial him back at all. But, boy, you got to be smarter than that. And I'm frustrated with how the special teams kind of continue to be a bugaboo for what they've done the last few weeks. And we've talked about it. And grading it, and it really almost hurt the Cowboys tonight. So, for that, again, Keith O'Quinn's a special teams coach. Get these guys coached up to playing a little smarter.
And just for the record, Stretch, I did see Jason Garrett in the postgame locker room get over to a little side office and then tell Gregory, come on in here. And I kind of monitored it. Okay, how long is this going to last? Gregory, 5-6 minutes, and he still hadn't come out of there. So, a lot of times we get on Garrett. Oh, he doesn't do anything. He doesn't get on these guys. Immediately after the game, I did see him call him in. I don't know what happened in there, but I did see him call him in to visit with. Let's go over the offensive side of the ball. And let's start Stretch. We usually start with the receivers. Let's actually go to the quarterback. This is a game that Dak had some good moments. He hit Gallup on a big 40-yard play early, and then also in the second half he missed him on a play you just had to have a busted coverage where I say it's a busted coverage. The guy, he put a great move.
He ran a double move.
A double move. The guy just fell down, and he was wide open.
Yeah, and the bigger concern for me, Matt, was the 2 throws before that where he threw the fade and he threw it 5 yards out of bounds. I mean, it was a very,
also
very poor throw. Yeah. Now, the thing that keeps me pumped up about him is then on 3rd and 10, he breaks the pocket and sticks it north and south and gets a big first down conversion. So, I didn't think he had his best game. I didn't like him missing the deep throws. He's got to get to where he sets his feet and gives his receivers a chance to catch those deep balls. I'm hoping that with time he'll get to hook up with these guys. But again, missing that deep ball, that's a critical deep ball. Throwing the ball out of bounds. I mean, I just give him barely a B tonight in what I feel like was an okay performance.
And you would have given him a C or even worse if that turnover, I think, that
had he not gotten that first down, Matt, had he not gotten
I know, but also
absolutely.
The turnover down here gave them another shot.
And he's had trouble all year, kind of controlling the football. There early in the year, he had a couple of bounces bounce right to him. He's got to protect the football more. So
11 fumbles now on the season.
Yeah, he's got to protect the football more. Here's the other thing that I'm going to say before we move on from Dak too. Is, Matt, he's got to, when it's not there, he's got to be okay throwing the football away. I mean, he tries to hang on to it too long. It gets into a sack situation. He's got to know, hey, if it isn't there and you don't feel right, just throw it away and we'll live to fight another down. It's 2nd and 10, not 2nd and 18, 2nd and 20.
Yeah. And he doesn't, it always, when somebody's coming at his face and he still doesn't get rid of it. When he sees the guy coming at him, okay, running back, Zeke had a really nice run on that drive where they really were running that clock and got it deep down there. He had a really punishing drive there, or punishing run. But overall, not a huge night for him.
No, but what I like is when they're shutting him down, he's effective in the screen game. He's effective catching the football. I mean, he gets it north and south and goes with it. I almost am going to put Noah Brown in. I want to grade him with the running backs. I mean, again, tonight, they let him be kind of a fullback type guy, motioning him some. I didn't see a lot out of him, but I like that they're using different personnel groupings to try to get a hat on a hat for Zeke. I thought tonight's game was a very, blue collar. Hey, he brought his, I know you're a big pimento cheese guy. He brought his pimento cheese and his Dr. Pepper and just played his butt off tonight. And, for that, I'm going to give the running backs a B.
Yeah, there's a brand called Prices that I like. It's pretty cheap. And when it gets cool, it gets a little cool this time of year. Pimento cheese is good for the system. Stretch, offensive line. You had a couple of moments there. Our buddy Xavier it was really funny. I heard somebody say, "Hey, good game, Xavier," after the game. One of the defensive guys, Lawrence, in fact, and said, "Did you watch me?" He was not pleased with his performance. But what did you think of the overall performance? Cameron Fleming having to start over there at left tackle.
Yeah, they not a real good night for this group. I mean, had some critical penalties and critical situations. I thought they did okay in protection. They were bull rushed some. Now this is a very good. New Orleans is a very good front, so they were having some issues with some of the stunts and things that they were doing. But that group, again, a borderline C, Matt, because it was just kind of enough to get the win. That's about how they played.
Yeah, and boy, they really stayed behind the sticks. Let's look at these wide receivers, and Maury made some really nice plays in the first half. Obviously, Gallup could have had even a bigger play, had the 40-yard play. Could have had another one. He got open on the double move. Beasley, when they finally got 3rd and manageable, Beasley, I thought, made a big third down conversion down there when it was 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 5. What did you think of these wide receivers?
The thing that concerns me is I thought it was a bad call. Cooper, kind of dropped the dig. Now, they weren't able to – it was right there in the first half. New Orleans was out of their challenges, so they couldn't challenge that. He also fumbled the ball on a slant. He's got to protect the football better. I did see at least Beasley, got out, ran that option route, converted a big third down. Gallup, yes, he ran a good route on the double move. I thought he ran an okay route on the fade when the ball was deep and thrown out of bounds. Again, Brown, they're using him some. I'm not seeing much out of Hearn. I mean, I just not seeing much there. But this group, to me, just played average tonight, and we have been. I think we've been very positive with this group since Amari got here. Tonight, I just didn't see that same. I didn't see that same juice. Okay. I didn't see that same gear. I didn't see that same go get the football. And so for that, I'm going to give this group a C.
C for them. Tight ends on the backside, I actually saw Rico actually go out there and block some people. And Jarwin had one really nice play, 12-yard play. What did you see from the tight ends?
They're not very good. I mean, and I know there's times when, but I tell you something. My boy Colonel Schultz, he can't block me in a phone booth. I mean, he is just not physical enough. I think that this is something that when you run a one-back offense, you've got to have some tight ends that can secure the edge. And it's becoming more and more magnified every week. And I thought this is the group, in my mind, from a running game standpoint, that really let that's why Zeke, I think, had 71 yards, something like that. He just didn't have the night because they when you run some of those powers and you got to cut off the backside or you run the tight end power, that guy has to be physical. I mean, I saw Jarwin tonight down when the Cowboys got the ball 1st and goal at the 7. I mean, he absolutely whiffed. And so to me, this group is really they're not very talented and they're not playing very well right now. And boy, I mean, at best, I can give that group just a D for what they did.
Whoa. Boy, harsh grade on a big night for the Cowboys. Cowboys get 13-10. Stretch, great having you out at AT&T Stadium. I think everybody enjoyed seeing you in the press box, kind of back to your normal state. And I appreciate everything. And That's a Stretch continues to be a really good segment for us. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
There he is. That's a Stretch, Glenn Stretch Smith. Hear him every week on the Doomsday Podcast. And, as we kind of...
We're going to hire a Doomsday censor, I think.
Well, I mean, this was the first week, about in a month. No
he's had a little talking. I think Jason Garrett got him in the side room and had a little chat with him after Andy Gregory, maybe.
I think you're right. I think the profanity was missing in this one, and I think it had something to do. Stretch was, giving out A+s, Ed. I mean, that's.
I'm not surprised. They deserve it on defense.
That's a happy guy. That's a happy man. I think he gave I think the secondary might have gotten an A+. That's pretty.
I don't think there were probably too many of those grades on the offensive side of the ball.
No. And we need to talk a little offense. Dak continues to put the ball on the ground. He recovered one of them. He gave up one late. Boy, it could have ended up being enormous if Jordan Lewis doesn't make that play on defense. What did you, Ed, that offensive performance, they put up 13, could have had, legitimately could have been up, 17
well, they were up 10
zip.
For a while, right?
Yeah, but at halftime, easily could have been up 17-0. Maybe you could even make the argument 20. Had to settle for field goals. It was an offense that in the first half kind of did what it needed to do, and then in the second half they just kind of got behind the chains and really didn't do anything until that final drive when they went down there and then fumbled, of course, at the end of it. But all together, I would say offensively, pretty piss-poor performance in the second half.
Well, we're going to have to use a censor for you, too, I guess.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, you can be guided by your own morals in this conversation. But I would just I would say that while it was far from flawless and could have ultimately, some of their mistakes could have been fatal, that generally I think they accomplished a couple of important things, one of which was they drove 85 yards with their first possession, and they made a big play to Gallup in there, getting them inside the red zone, and then they didn't score a touchdown, but they scored a field goal, and that gave them a lead and let them play from ahead, and the Saints had not been exposed to trying to overcome a deficit anytime recently. And then even after that, they had, possessions of 16, 14, and 12 plays. So they consumed a lot of clock. That denied Brees opportunities on a night where he wasn't playing very well and needed every one he could get. And talking to some of the offensive coaches, they told me that, that was really the plan, was to use long drive to try to control the tempo of the game and the style of the game. And they acknowledge that they missed some scoring opportunities that would have made it perfect execution, but they're going to take the win regardless. And I think one of the things you saw them do early on was use their knowledge of players in the NFC East to the detriment of the Saints, because they made a clear point early in the game of exploiting Eli Apple, the cornerback that the Saints acquired in a trade at the deadline from the Giants. So the Cowboys are very familiar with his weaknesses, playing him in the NFC East twice a year, and I thought they took full advantage, forcing 3 penalty calls on him and completing several balls on him early in the game.
Ed, would you almost say they took a bite out of the apple?
I think they took a big bite out of the apple, and then they scored the big touchdown with the screen pass to Ezekiel Elliott, and was just magnificently executed, and great blocks from Joe Looney and Zach Martin he scored untouched. And I think that's the other point maybe that needs to be made here as we talk about the performance of the quarterback and the fact that he was sacked 7 times in this game is, again, they played without Tyron Smith and they won without Tyron Smith, and we hadn't seen them do that in a long time. They essentially have 3 backup players on their starting offensive line right now at center, left guard, and left tackle, and they found a way, while being far from perfect, to execute well enough and avoid making too many turnovers, that they've still been able to have success.
What's funny to me, Ed, is while we can knock him for the fumbles, and he's got to shore that up. I mean, that can be a fatal flaw, Dak Prescott. But when in key moments, like when they were 3rd and 10, it is kind of wild to have a ball carrier in your quarterback who is capable of bullying his way. And when he got up and did the scream right after that, they do feed off of him. So as bad as some of that second half was, that was a big moment extending that, because at least, even though he fumbled later in that drive, at least they ate up a lot of clock on that drive.
And changed field position and so forth. But you do have to pay those drives off, and if you're going to consistently win against good competition, and going forward, they're going to face more of that, and especially if they make the playoffs. But and we've talked about before that, Dak likes to take a physical approach to playing the quarterback position. It's somewhat unique, and it does energize the crowd. And you heard the reaction of probably, 100,000 people who, for the most part, would like somebody other than Dak Prescott to be the quarterback on 57 of the other snaps during the course of the game. But he did make a couple plays like that, using his mobility to his advantage. But overall, you're right. The play late in the game where they're in scoring position and they have the lead, he has to have much greater awareness that Lael Collins is not being successful blocking Cam Jordan, because it's happening, right in his field of vision, and you just got to make sure he secures the football. To have 11 fumbles, the most in the NFL, and I think he's been sacked now 42 times, which is also the most in the NFL. I think it speaks not only to poor protection at times because of the offensive line situation that we've already just discussed, but also his lack of awareness at key moments in the pocket, and his unwillingness to protect, be aware and protect the football. This can't continue to happen, or it is inevitably going to cost them games.
Ed, I thought of you tonight because, this Saints, not only the scouting staff, the general manager, some of these coaches. And I think and I've known Sean a long time, but you unlike me, have kind of kept up a good relationship with him over the years. But now the fact that Sean Payton came in here and his team scored only 10 points.
Yeah.
Now, the Saints may go on and do great things. Who knows? But that has to kill him. I mean, that has to, because he has a great relationship with Jerry. He has a great relationship with this community. I mean, he lived here for the longest time. Even after, it caused controversy when he was traveling back and forth because he wanted to live here. But
I think if you ask Jerry Jones, who's the one guy who you allowed to leave your organization, maybe whose talent you didn't see soon enough and didn't value enough that you would like to coach your team, he'd pick Sean Payton in a heartbeat.
Exactly.
And if you ask Sean Payton if he could coach any other team in the NFL, which one would it be? I have no doubt whatsoever it would be the Cowboys. He'll take this personally. At the same time, it's not unlike what happened in 2009 when the Saints were 13-0 and the Cowboys upset them in the Superdome, and that led the Saints to 3 consecutive losses to finish the season. But then they went in and swept their way through the playoffs and won the Super Bowl. So they can recover from this sort of thing. They have great personnel. I think Sean will use it to motivate his players. And in all likelihood, they probably like another shot at Dallas in the Superdome for maybe, a playoff with a playoff berth at stake.
Wouldn't that be fun? And I think the Doomsday Podcast, Ed, I'm going to make you a promise. If that scenario happens, we will be in New Orleans for that, okay?
I can't wait.
Yeah, I think it'll be.
Who would have predicted tonight that Dak Prescott would finish the game with a higher passer rating than Drew Brees, that Ezekiel Elliott would have more yards from scrimmage than Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram combined, and that Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup would have more receiving yards than Michael Thomas? Nobody, I think, would have won that trifecta.
No, it was that's a good point on your part. Last thing, Ed, I want to leave everybody with. You're always good at putting these things in perspective from a divisional. Do you sort of think, you made the mention earlier that Redskins, Eagles, they had to look at this and go, wow. I mean, we had, like you said, the Cowboys losing this game. Cowboys, and of course they'll face down the road here, they'll face the Colts, a team that they thought might have been a sure win, is looking like a really improved team now. But
And they have a coach there who knows them extremely well, and Matt Eagles was their defensive coordinator, who was in the Chris Richard role here last year.
That is true. They have a ceremonial defensive coordinator here pretty much every year. But now, Ed, do you think that? You have to see the Cowboys with a true upper hand in this division, and as you put it, this is a team now that's like, hey, we're in fourth in the, we got the 4th seed, and we're looking to move up. I mean, where do you think the Cowboys sort of are in the NFC? Not just, hey, where are they, from a mathematical standpoint, where do you think they are kind of moving forward here?
Well, from a psychological point of view, if you consider, the way that Jerry Jones and DeMarcus Lawrence and Amari Cooper talked about, this game as if it were one that they could win, it could be the start of something bigger than maybe they ever really expected was possible this season, that it could almost have a transformative effect on these players. And Jerry even suggested as much after the game. He said, you win something like this against a team that well coached, those kinds of players, a caliber of team like that, and you've done it. The mirror knows you've done it. So he believes that this can be a completely different team in terms of its confidence, its mentality going forward. And then from a practical point of view, I think everybody basically eliminated Washington when they lost, Alex Smith, their starting quarterback. It became Dallas's division to win. And it's more that now than it was before this game was played, because this is going to put pressure on these other teams in the division to keep stride with Dallas by winning this week. And the Eagles play the Redskins, so one of them's got to lose. And the Eagles obviously have 3 games left against the 2 teams in front of them, Dallas and Washington, one of them Monday night. And the Cowboys play Philadelphia next. but they have a huge scheduling advantage in that they don't play again until a week from Monday night. They're at home. The Eagles are playing this Monday night, and then they have to travel to play Dallas. So the Cowboys have a huge advantage from a scheduling standpoint that way.
Yeah, and people have groused about the Cowboys for years having a Thanksgiving advantage. This is sort of the post-Thanksgiving advantage that the Cowboys seem to have, and Cowboys have to be feeling great as they get sort of a modified type bye here. Ed, tremendous stuff as always. Doomsday Podcast. We appreciate everybody. Continue to do big numbers, and Spotify. Apple, all the different iTunes, all the different ways you find us.
Revolver.
Yeah, Revolver. What a great platform that has been for us, and we're so proud of that association.
Facebook.
Do you know my people, by the way, Ed, on Revolver?
I've not been introduced to any of your people.
No. I just wanted to tell you this. This huge fight in March, I think it's March 16th, that's my people. Like Errol Spence is fighting Mikey Garcia. That's going to be here March 16th. Spence and his trainer, Derek James, close friends of mine. So, I mean, we really have this thing. We kind of got the market cornered here. And Ed, great stuff as always. And we just very appreciative of the Nation family for having us in their suite this evening. Cowboys win 13-10. And they are sprinting toward the playoffs. This has been the Doomsday Podcast. Thanks to Mark Friedman. Thanks to DJ Ringenberg here on site.
He's become a regular, huh, DJ?
Thanks to, he does a great job. If we get him away from that sad little radio station. Ed Werder doing a tremendous job. We just want to say good night, everybody.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.